Welcome to Audit the Audit, where we sort out the who and what and the right and wrong of police interactions. This episode covers fire department scene authority, threats, and fighting words, and is brought to us by NOJ News 1's channel. Be sure to check out the description below and give them the credit that they deserve. On March 18, 2021, firefighters from the Montgomery County Fire Department responded to a call about a fire in a private parking lot in Tacoma Park, Maryland. The owner of the YouTube channel for the National Organization of Justice, who we will refer to as Mr. Justice, had been supervising a small fire in a fire pit box, and upon the firefighters' arrival informed them that the blaze had been extinguished and asked them not to enter the property. The firefighters ignored the request, as well as Mr. Justice's subsequent request that they leave the property. Mr. Justice began to record the incident after the firefighters had entered the parking lot.
We have Tacoma Park, Montgomery County Fire Department trespassing. I've asked them to leave the property, and they refuse to leave the property. I'm going to ask you to step off the private property.
And I'm going to tell you that
You're not telling me anything, sir. Step off the property, please.
No.
What's your name?
Captain Brady Miller, with Montgomery County Fire
Okay.
Rescue.
I want you off the property. It'll be back on in a few minutes, but I want you off the property. We guarantee you we'll see you up in Greenbelt.
Okay.
Now get off the property.
No.
You're refusing to get off the private property?
Correct.
You see where it says no trespassing? Do you see where it says no trespassing?
I do, sir.
Okay, so I want you off the property.
Alpha 1, Ops 1.
Paramedic engine 702 to Montgomery. Could I have the county police?
Yeah, please have the county police come down here. I want you off the property right now.
No.
You refusing to leave the property, Captain? Private property?
Correct.
Okay, that says no trespassing?
That is correct.
Okay.
Captain Miller continues to refuse to leave the property, despite Mr. Justice's repeated requests. In general, firefighters have the legal right to enter private property to investigate a reported fire and extinguish it, with or without the property owner's consent. Property owners do not have the same legal rights to refuse fire department assistance that competent adults have to refuse medical treatment. This distinction is primarily due to the fact that firefighters have a legal duty to respond to a fire and can be held accountable for their failure to do so, and that an unextinguished fire can spread, putting the entire community at risk. The fire department's right of entry is explained in Section 9-803 of the Maryland Public Safety Code, which states that, quote, "At any time, and without liability for trespass, a fire official may enter a building, including a private dwelling, or on premises where a fire is burning, or where there is reasonable cause to believe a fire is burning, to extinguish the fire." However, some open fires, such as a recreational bonfire or a cooking fire, are permitted. According to Section 3-2 of the Montgomery County Code of Ordinances, an open fire is defined as, quote, "a fire in which any material is burned in the open, or a receptacle other than a furnace, incinerator, or other equipment not in conformance with the design requirements of the applicable building code of the county or the air quality control regulations of the state." The county ordinances also contain a series of regulations regarding when open fires are permitted, including Section 3-8, which states that, quote, "a person may set an open fire, such as a campfire, for recreational purposes if the fire does not produce visible emissions that exceed 20% opacity for a total of more than 3 minutes in any 60-minute period, and is not larger than 3 feet in diameter." And Section 22-88, which lists various rules for conducting open fires, including the requirements that, quote, "open fires shall be attended at all times until completely extinguished," and that, quote, "no person shall kindle a fire upon the land of another without permission of the owner or his agent." As the specific details surrounding Mr. Justice's parking lot fire are unknown, it's impossible to determine whether the fire complied with county regulations on open fires. However, a court would likely find that at the very least, the fire department had the legal authority to enter the property to investigate, if not extinguish, the fire. Despite the broad grant of authority to enter private property given to firefighters, it is important to note that the Supreme Court has repeatedly affirmed the Fourth Amendment prohibition against unreasonable searches still applies to firefighters. For example, in the 1978 case of Michigan versus Tyler, the court held that, quote, "there is no diminution in a person's reasonable expectation of privacy, nor in the protection of the Fourth Amendment, simply because the official conducting the search wears the uniform of a firefighter rather than a policeman, or because his purpose is to ascertain the cause of a fire rather than to look for evidence of a crime, or because the fire might have been started deliberately. Searches for administrative purposes, like searches for evidence of crime, are encompassed by the Fourth Amendment." Eventually, officers from the Tacoma Police Department arrived on the scene.
What are we waiting for, Captain?
The police.
Oh, and what are they going to
want
do?
them to come here.
And no, you called them. I told you to get the off the
I
property.
told you no.
Okay, all right. As long as you say no.
Okay.
And refusing to follow
That is
an order
correct.
of someone who owns a
That
property.
is correct.
Okay. Don't go nowhere. Tough guy.
What are you going to do about it?
No, what are you going to do? I'm going to show you what I'm going to do about it. I'm going to have your monkey up in Greenbelt for violating my civil rights when I told you to get the off the
Why would I
property.
go to Greenbelt? This is Montgomery County.
Don't play dumb buddy. Federal. I don't with Montgomery County. Get your dumb on out of here.
Threatening a public service
I
employee.
don't give a
know
what
that
you just
threatening a
said.
public- So are you threatening me?
I'm telling you, I'm
Are
going to
you
take your
threatening me?
monkey the federal court,
Are
and
you
you can take
threatening
that
me?
any kind of way you want to
So
take
is
it.
that a threat?
Okay, it's a promise.
Is it a
It's
threat?
a
Are you
promise.
threatening me?
It's a promise.
Okay.
You realize threatening public safety is a felony, right?
Young man, if you think taking you to civil court in a felony court for trespassing, violating my civil rights a threat, then you take it any kind of way you want to take
Threatening
it.
a public safety official is a felony, right?
You sound stupid.
Captain Miller accuses Mr. Justice of threatening him after Mr. Justice warns him he plans to take him to court, and one of the other firefighters on the scene informs Mr. Justice that he is committing a felony. While assaulting a firefighter can be a felony offense under Maryland law, and threatening one can be a misdemeanor assault, Mr. Justice's statements in no way constituted an illegal assault. Section 3-203 of the Maryland Criminal Code describes the offense of assault in the second degree, stating that a person who intentionally causes physical injury to a firefighter engaged in providing emergency medical care or rescue services is guilty of a felony, and outlining other circumstances where an assault is considered a misdemeanor. In the 2013 case of Snyder v. State, the Maryland Court of Special Appeals explained that, quote, the statutory offense of second-degree assault encompasses three modalities. 1. Intent to frighten. 2. Attempted battery. And 3. Battery. The intent to frighten variety requires that the defendant commit an act with the intent to place another in fear of immediate physical harm, and the defendant had the apparent ability at that time to bring about the physical harm. Clearly, a threat to sue someone would not constitute the type of threat that would cause another to fear immediate physical harm. Threatening litigation is likewise not the type of threat that can constitute extortion, which Section 3-705 of the Maryland Criminal Code defines as verbally threatening to, quote, accuse any person of a crime or of anything that, if true, would bring the person into contempt or disrepute, or cause physical injury to a person, inflict emotional distress on a person, cause economic damage to a person, or cause damage to the property of a person with the intent to unlawfully extort money, property, labor, services, or anything of value from another. Arguably, threatening litigation could constitute a threat to accuse the firefighters of something that would bring them into contempt or disrepute or cause them economic damage. However, in the 2008 case of State versus Rendleman, the Maryland Supreme Court held that, quote, as a matter of law, threats of litigation, regardless of merit, do not constitute wrongful threats of economic injury, and that, quote, threats of litigation, regardless of merit, do not constitute unlawful extortion. Therefore, even if Mr. Justice was threatening to sue the officers to coerce a payment or another thing of value from them, which he was not, he could not be charged with any crime based on threats of litigation.
How you doing, Officer Tim? All right. All right. I asked these gentlemen to leave the property. They're refusing to leave.
First of all, if there's a fire, they have.
This fire, I understand. I understand the fire rules. This fire is contained. There is no evidence of any kind of destruction with this fire. And what's the CCN numbers and the call number on this, please? You gonna put that on there also?
I do not have that.
I'm not talking to you, young man. Right now, you are defended.
Don't direct your question.
Okay, I'm not directing none. I was talking to this officer right here. Okay. So take your smart through that gate and get on out of here.
That's what
Sir,
I'm talking about.
Okay? I'm on private property, my man. Okay. You're not talking to nobody. I'm on private property.
Do me a favor.
You trespassing.
I'm going to tell you once.
Okay?
Calm
You're
down.
trespassing.
I'm going to tell you once. Calm down.
Wait a minute, Michelle. I'm on my property.
Okay, you're doing
I'm
something. You're doing too much.
No, he's
You're
doing too much.
Let it go. I got this. Let
Okay.
it go.
Well,
I got
if
this.
you got
Let
this,
it
sir,
go.
then tell him I'm
I'm telling
directing
you.
my call.
I'm
Talk
talking
to you,
Let
not
it go.
to him.
Let it go.
Okay?
Let it go.
I've asked them to leave
I'm
the
talking
property.
to you now. Let it go.
Okay,
I'm handling it.
you need to back up a little off of me, man.
back up.
You need to back up off of me because now you're starting to irritate
We're
me.
done.
Okay, that's right. Get on out the gate.
I'll leave when I want to leave.
Oh yeah?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I will leave
Give
when
me
I
your
wanna
card,
leave.
and I'm
Okay,
gonna prove a
bye.
point to y'all. You're not giving me your name.
I'm not giving you nothing.
Okay. I got a complaint. Don't worry about it. I know where to go at. You'll be next
know where to go.
You'll be next to be retired,
Okay,
sir.
thank you.
You'll be next to be retiring.
This was
Yeah, go ahead, man. Leave.
Whatever.
Leave.
Make me leave. Make me leave.
Leave. I ain't gonna make it because see that's what you want me to do. But I'm gonna show you how to do it with a pen. I'm gonna show you how to do it with a pen. Get the fuck on. All you gotta do is sign a contract, baby. Anytime with you. Anytime what? What you saying? Anytime what?
Exactly what I'm saying.
No, I don't know what you saying. Say it.
After Mr. Justice orders Officer Sims to leave the property, Officer Sims responds, "Make me move," and later says, "Anytime, anytime, anytime," implying that he is willing to fight Mr. Justice. It is possible that these statements could be found to be unprotected speech that falls outside the scope of the First Amendment. As we've discussed before on ATA, the First Amendment does not protect all speech, and states are constitutionally permitted to ban certain categories of speech, such as true threats and fighting words. As the Supreme Court explained in the 2003 case of Virginia versus Black, quote, "True threats encompass those statements where the speaker means to communicate a serious expression of an intent to commit an act of unlawful violence to a particular individual or group of individuals. The speaker need not actually intend to carry out the threat. Rather, a prohibition on true threats protects individuals from the fear of violence and from the disruption that fear engenders, in addition to protecting people from the possibility that the threatened violence will occur. Intimidation in the constitutionally prescribable sense of the word is a type of true threat, where a speaker directs a threat to a person or group of persons with the intent of placing the victim in fear of bodily harm or death. While Officer Sims' statements could be considered a threat, they may better be characterized as invitations for Mr. Justice to fight him rather than an expression of his intent to fight Mr. Justice, which would more likely fall under the fighting words exception to the First Amendment. In the 1942 case of Czaplinski versus New Hampshire, the Supreme Court held that, quote, "There are certain well-defined and narrowly limited classes of speech, the prevention and punishment of which have never been thought to raise any constitutional problem. These include the lewd and obscene, the profane, the libelous, and the insulting or fighting words, those which by their very utterance inflict injury or tend to incite an immediate breach of the peace." The court built on this definition in the 1949 case of Terminiello versus Chicago, holding that the fighting words must, quote, "produce a clear and present danger of a serious substantive evil that rises far above public inconvenience, annoyance, or unrest." And in the 1989 case of Texas versus Johnson, defining fighting words as, quote, "a direct personal insult or an invitation to exchange fisticuffs." While the law on this subject is murky at best, it is possible that a court could conclude Officer Sims' statements constituted fighting words that could constitutionally be criminally prosecuted under an appropriate statute. However, Maryland law does not include a relevant statute, so it is doubtful that Officer Sims could be charged for his conduct.
Say it. No, you shut up and get the in your car and get the down the street. Don't tell me where to go at.
You know what? My name's
Okay, and you know not my mother name at, and you know where I'm at. Anytime you ready. Anytime you get ready. You think that mother goddamn uniform scares somebody?
Bring it.
You think that uniform scares somebody?
I don't need this.
I don't need
Take
this.
it
So
off.
you talking all that?
Yeah, whatever.
You talking all that? You know where I'm at.
Bye.
Mr. Justice and Officer Sims continue their heated exchange for several minutes, and eventually Mr. Justice requested a supervisor. Officer Sims called a supervisor to the scene, and as they awaited his arrival, their discussion slowly became more peaceful. By the time the supervisor arrived on the scene, Officer Sims was calm, and he truthfully reported what had happened and took responsibility for his emotionally charged outbursts. After airing out his grievance with Officer Sims' conduct to the supervising officer, Mr. Justice made his peace with Officer Sims, and everyone left the scene without further incident. It is unclear whether Mr. Justice pursued any further legal action regarding this incident, but based on the conversations featured in this interaction, it's safe to assume that he has experience filing federal complaints against members of law enforcement and may very well have taken further action. Overall, Captain Miller gets a C-, because although he was likely within his authority to enter Mr. Justice's property and investigate the fire complaint, he remained on the property for much longer than necessary to conduct his investigation, extinguished what appeared to be a controlled fire that presented no danger to life or property, and maintained an overall rude and condescending demeanor throughout the interaction. While there is a strong argument to be made that Captain Miller was within his authority to enter the property and investigate the fire, the video clearly shows that the fire was small, controlled, and likely legal, and it is difficult to understand why the captain was so adamant about extinguishing such a fire. Captain Miller's condescending demeanor and failure to employ any measure of de-escalation dissolved the credibility he was attempting to enforce, and instead instead of working to compromise with Mr. Justice, the captain invoked his authority in an effort to gain control of the situation. This interaction highlights the importance of de-escalation training in every sector of the public emergency management industry, as it could potentially save municipalities from frivolously wasted resources and costly lawsuits. Officer Sims gets a B, because although he did engage in a heated verbal altercation with Mr. Justice, he eventually calmed down, admitted fault to his superior, and reconciled with Mr. Justice. Remaining calm while dealing with distraught individuals is a major aspect of police work, and Officer Sims's outbursts had the potential to escalate this encounter into a physical altercation. Much like Captain Miller, Officer Sims failed to employ any measure of de-escalation and maintained a hostile and confrontational attitude for a majority of the interaction. All that said, Officer Sims did eventually manage to calm down and apologize for his behavior, and called for a supervisor upon Mr. Justice's request. Once the supervisor arrived, Officer Sims gave an honest account of the preceding events and admitted that he lost control of his emotions and threatened Mr. Justice. It is clear that this was more so a case of a man losing control of his emotions, and not necessarily a case of an officer maliciously abusing his authority, and I commend Officer Sims for being honest and taking responsibility for his actions. Mr. Justice gets a B+, because although he was within his rights to order the officers off of his property, he failed to invoke his right to remain silent and allowed his emotions to dictate a majority of his conduct. Although the firemen were within their authority to enter Mr. Justice's property, it is easy to understand why he was so upset that they wouldn't leave upon his request. From Mr. Justice's perspective, it likely appeared as though the firemen were abusing their authority to spite his orders to leave the premises, and there may very well be some legitimacy to that perspective. Much of the turbulence of this encounter can be attributed to the egos of both Mr. Justice and the public officials, and this interaction may have unfolded much differently if Mr. Justice had approached the firemen in a different manner. However, that does not excuse the conduct of the public officials involved, and their failure to de-escalate was certainly a major factor. I commend Mr. Justice for standing up for his rights, but I also believe that he may have benefited from invoking his right to silence more effectively. Let us know if there is an interaction or legal topic you would like us to discuss in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to check out my second channel for even more police interaction content.